I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest is Ashley Han, brand and marketing strategist and author of Magnetic Confidence. Ashley, welcome to Life Stories.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Magnetic. When did the talk to me about a time in your childhood where you were practicing magnetism, but you didn't know that you were doing that.
Yeah, when I was a child and growing up in my teenage years, I used to, at the time I didn't know it of course, but I used to think that I had this kind of like a superpower, and it would be like I would want something really bad. I would really, really want it, and I would focus on it, and somehow, even if it was something really out there, it would happen. And I've also done the opposite, where I focused on something that I didn't want, and then I ended up attracting that very thing that I didn't want. And, as a child, I had my moments, like I was bullied as a child, I was bullied as a teenager. So when stuff like that happens, you can kind of go in an emotional spiral, and you'll start attracting things that you don't want into your life.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town outside of Seattle called Silverdale in Washington.
And brothers, sisters?
I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. Yeah.
And what was the best thing about your childhood?
The best thing about my childhood, I would say my relationship with my parents. I feel I'm really blessed to be really close with them. And my brother and I weren't as close growing up. We were very different. We're very opposite. Now we're super close. I would say my relationship with my parents were very, very close and tight-knit.
What was the best lesson that you learned from your mom?
From my mom, she taught me, I would say, all of my manners, being polite. So my culture is Japanese. So she's very polite, she's very giving, she's very, not proper is not the right word, because she's definitely really fun, but she's really taught me how to carry myself as a woman and be in my grace.
What was the best quality that you learned from your father? Mindset.
My dad taught me at a young age all about mindset. He took me to Tony Robbins when I walked on fire when I was 14 years old. He has the coals.
Yeah.
So I did that when I was 14. I broke a board in half when I was 12. So he sent me to a Tony Robbins camp for kids, a 7-day camp. So he always had me in that, I wouldn't get paid to do chores. I would get paid to read self-development books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Who Moved My Cheese, and he had me on that path at a young age. So.
What a great education to have.
He's amazing.
So at that point, what was, for you, talk to me a little bit about the camp that you were at, the Tony Robbins camp, because that sounds fascinating. And most of the time people only get to that later on when they're feeling some type of pain. They go, oh, I got to work on myself now. So.
Well, I was really young when I went to that, so I feel like I didn't digest it as fully as I could have if I went to something like that now. And I was terrified going into it, I remember, because I was with a bunch of people I didn't know. I was in LA, it was in LA, and I was scared to Tony Robbins camp and walking on fire, all these things, it sounds crazy. So, but once I was there, I made friends, and it was a beautiful experience for me. And I really learned, for me in that moment, the power. My dad would always say this: you can do anything. So the power of possibility.
Was there something specific that happened soon after going to that camp in your life that was?
Well, honestly, not that I can remember right afterwards. Like I said, I did go into a spiral at one point in my early teens.
Talk to me about the spiral.
Yeah, so I would beat myself up a lot, and I took a turn, and even though I grew up with such an amazing father who taught me all this mindset stuff, I really didn't know how to use it, and I was very hard on myself. I was very critical of myself. I would actually had suicidal thoughts in my teenage years. I would actually eat lunch in the bathroom stall because I was afraid of rejection from the other kids. And I was bullied. I went through depression phases, and yeah, I was having trouble fitting in. I always felt like an outcast.
When do you feel that started? Was it something that people were mean to you and then that seed was planted, or it's deep in the psyche and the soul?
It was definitely experiences I had that had me make up a belief that I was not worthy, that I wasn't going to be accepted by people. So I had the earliest memories of, someone who I thought was my friend, and it was a female girl, and I felt betrayed and ridiculed by her at one point, and it hurt really bad. And I created, in that moment, a belief, because I was really young, I must have been 7 years old, and I created a belief that no one really is my friend, no one really wants to be my friend, and if they are, they're just pretending. So then I would isolate myself, and I created that
the spiral.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting from an energy standpoint that things go in spirals. It can be in a negative spiral, it can be in a positive spiral.
Mm-hmm.
What was the turning point from you going from negative back to positive again?
Yeah, it was when I really started facing what was going on and why. So what we resist persists, right?
Well, what was your why for them making that decision to go, what I resist persists, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna now break through that?
It was hitting a low point. I mean, I got to a point where I was just tired of it. I had lost hope. I felt lost. And someone had come to me saying, it was my best friend at the time, and she said, I have this leadership course, and she was talking to me about its self-development, self-growth, and I had done that growing up. So I thought, you know what, at this point, I have nothing to lose, why not? That was kind of my attitude at that point. And from that point, that was the turning point for me. It was a huge investment in myself. And I have not looked back since.
You say a huge investment in yourself. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, financially, time-wise, it was super uncomfortable. I mean, it was 4 months long. So it was a 4-month-long transformative journey, and it wasn't cheap. So but I went all in.
Did you use credit cards for that?
Yeah, actually, I went with my best friend, and we were the first in the group in San Diego, so we got actually a really great deal compared to what they're charging now for it. So yeah, it was uncomfortable, even just the thought of diving into something like that, let alone the financial cost. But that's what it takes, we've got to invest in ourselves. It's the best thing we can do for ourselves.
Do you think there's a way one can invest in oneself and take the big risk without having to use the credit cards?
I mean, I think that it's an interesting question, because I believe that scarcity is something that can be really deep-rooted in a lot of people. We have it in different ways. So if money is like what's having you not choose to do something for yourself, it's something to look at, because money is just energy. So if we're resisting it because of money, that could be a worthiness conversation, like a deep-rooted worthiness conversation. And that's what it was for me anyways. So yes, you can do things, of course. You can. There's tons of resources online where people can learn, but the most important part is doing the work. Like rolling up your sleeves and actually getting in the practice of transformation, because you can't just read about it or listen about it,
Share with me about how you moved towards focusing on magnetic confidence and how that then tied into you developing a business and brand and strategy.
Yeah. So confidence for me, without tying in the magnetic piece first,
yes,
is a deep knowing of your worth, of your value, and who you are. A deep, grounded knowing. Now, magnetic confidence is because you're so grounded in who you are, your values, what you stand for, that you actually become polarizing. You start attracting what is in alignment, and you repel what isn't. And you're okay with that because you are confident in yourself. So that's what magnetic confidence is. And so for me, remember I said before how I was attracting and repelling when I was young and not knowing I was doing it. And my spiral was me attracting negative things into my life because I was thinking that way. So once I realized the power of my thoughts, of these beliefs that we carry, that I was carrying, I started using it for good. And that's when I decided, and confidence for me was something I'd always struggled with, so I transformed my pain into my platform, into my power. And I knew I needed to write about it. I felt called to write about it because I would know so many other women struggle with confidence. And I really wanted to share my message with them in my story and speak into that.
So people could look at you now and go, wow, Ashley, look at with your platform, your community, you're so confident, but I'm feeling fill in the blank. I'm feeling awful. I'm not in your place. So what percentage of the time do you ever go back to a time where you don't feel good, where you have that negative polarization? Is there a percentage of the time you experience that?
Well, I think we all do at some point, even if we are in the work and we're practicing mindset and all the things that we've learned, our tools. I do it way less. And the difference is now I know, because I have the tools, I know what to do when it comes up. Because we're gonna come across new situations in our lives, new challenges, and it may trigger something within us that we haven't, dealt with in a while. But now that I have the tools to deal with them, I know what to do when it comes up now.
So tools, what would be 3 fabulous go-to tools?
Yes.
For someone who feels that way? And I know it's different depending on what the situation is.
I have a really great one. So this is identification process. So it's so important because, like, remember I said before, what we resist persists. So we cannot change what we're not aware exists. So awareness is always the first step. I have a process of awareness and identification where you first identify the limiting beliefs. So what's the thought you're having? I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. They won't like me. I'm not acceptable. Whatever it is, like, put that down, write it down. I recommend doing this on paper. It's really powerful. And then, where did you get that? What's the source? The reason why it's important to identify the source is because you weren't born into the world. We weren't born into the world thinking, I'm not good enough and I'm not worthy. It happened, some external influence had us believe that, right? So once we identify, for example, say it was my mom, okay? I identify where it came from. Now I'm able to separate myself from it and say, hey, that's not me. I'm not this belief. It was something I accumulated along the way. So then there's a source. What's the action that I take because I run this limiting belief? So you identify the action. The reason why this is important is because we're not always aware of the thoughts that are going on, but we can be really aware of our actions because we're doing something, right? We have a pattern. So then next time you do it, you'll be like, oh, there it is. I'm running that belief again. See, so the awareness is the first step. And then identifying, I call the fake reward and the real cost. The fake reward is the immediate gratification or perceived initial benefit that you're getting for running that limiting belief and making that action, because we wouldn't be doing something unless we got something out of it initially.
Eating the McDonald's, or in my case, it would be the croissant.
I love it because in the moment it tastes good. In the moment it feels good, but then, this is the key part, so then the real cost, the real undesired outcome that's happening. I'm not as healthy as I want to be. I am not making as much money as I want. I'm in debt, whatever the undesired result that's showing up. So now you have connected all those pieces. Okay, so that's the first step. Second is then transforming that limiting belief into what I like to call a limitless belief. So this is your new way of being that you get to practice. And it takes time, it doesn't happen overnight. But when you're aware, now you can create your new belief that serves you.
What do you feel is a timeline typical of the clients that work with you?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, if I have someone who's committed and doing the work, because obviously I can only lead a horse to the water, I can't make the horse drink. So it's up to them. They're the author of their experience. So if they're committed, I've seen it in 3-4 months, which is amazing, right? But if they are not and they're half in, half out, then it could take, years. So it really just depends on your commitment level and if you're in the practice and you're doing the work every day. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about the people who are the wind beneath your wings. They could be living, past, you could know them, or you don't know them. Who are 5 people that you really feel are there with you in creating the legacy that you are moving towards?
Definitely my dad. He's always been my biggest supporter, my biggest cheerleader, my rock. And he's never told me the answers. He's always just asked me the right questions. That's a good coach, by the way. That's why he's an incredible mentor. So my dad, and I do feel that I've never met my uncle. He died when he was 18. I do always.
What was your uncle's name?
Tony.
Tony.
Same name as my brother.
Oh.
So my brother was named after Tony.
And it's Tony Robbins.
And Tony Robbins, a bunch of Tonys, yes. And so my dad's brother, they were very close. I never met him. And I just imagine what it would be like if he was still here. I do feel that he's with me.
What do you imagine him to be like?
I imagine him to be, so my dad's my dad, right? I don't have an uncle like my dad. So I think it would be cool to have an uncle, that relationship. And that's because they're so similar. So this is what I hear. And I think it would be like having my dad, but having this like fun, playful, like, I don't know. It would be a cool, like how my cousins are with my dad. My cousins, like that's their uncle. And they play and they have fun and they joke. And anyways, I think it would be very similar to my dad and I's relationship, but just more fun and friendship, yeah.
Yes. So your dad, your uncle.
My dad, my uncle, my mom, of course. She's my best friend. My mom is my best friend. She's an incredible woman. And then, so my mom, my dad, my uncle, and then my brother and I have become so close. And he's actually a video editor, so we're kind of in similar, creative space. And so him, and then I would say, I feel like I pray every morning. And I feel that I have angels that do surround me. And I feel the energy, but I don't know what or who. Like I wouldn't be able to put a face to it. Have you ever experienced something like that?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so
yes,
I would put that in the place of the remaining because I feel it when I pray, and I say gratitude all the time for the angels that are surrounding me, and I know that I don't need to know everything. I just know that I feel it.
yes.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Legacy. I'm thinking about, well, let me go back a step briefly to the mission that you're on now, and you have a podcast as well.
I do, yeah, I just started it. Yeah.
So what is because I always see someone that has a podcast as they are very mission driven and impacting in their community. So what's the mission of your podcast? And what's the name of it as well?
The Ashley Hand Show, just my name and show.
Yes.
Nice and simple. So actually, I'm following instructions from my mentor and friend who had me, looked at me and said, start a podcast. This is why you're doing it. This is what you're going to do. Promise me you'll do it. And I said, okay. I had a lot of resistance to starting a podcast before.
Why was the resistance
Because
there?
I was like, everyone's doing it. Everyone's getting a podcast. Everyone's starting to. So I had that kind of floating in my head, like, well, everyone's doing it. And I got to push through that, and I'm loving it. It's been an incredible experience. So for me, why I'm doing it is a couple of things. My mission: A, creating impact, influencing people, and really helping to raise consciousness. That's my mission. I want to create oneness, love, and raise consciousness of humanity. That's my mission. So that's why even with my branding stuff, I work with conscious leaders. Because I believe that if I'm able to support them in creating even more impact, then we're increasing that ripple effect. So see, it all just works together. So that's the first. And the second is, it's a really great way for me to, like, Gary Vaynerchuk is the one who told me to do this. And he said, this is not your business, it's a business amplification tool. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's wisdom right there. And so my last question to you is, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for being a stand for people who are having trouble stepping into their power, owning their voice, and owning their worth. I want to be remembered for creating oneness on this planet and getting rid of all that separation that is created by us. And I want to be remembered for love and authenticity and vulnerability, and creating a ripple effect throughout the world. I mean, if I could get more women, I'm really passionate about working with women, to just see how incredibly valuable and perfect they are, that alone is the biggest reward I could ever ask for.
And just one sentence of something for those women. What is that action for them to take as a next step?
First is realizing that you are so worthy, and the only way that others can love, appreciate, accept you is if you love, appreciate, and accept yourself. You are source. Everything that's showing up in your life is because of you. So imagine if you truly owned your power, your worth, and loved yourself. Imagine what you could create. The possibilities would be limitless.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Joanna Garzilli. You're watching Life Stories. Today, my guest was Ashley Han, brand and marketing strategist and author of Magnetic Confidence. You can tune in and watch Life Stories at lifestoriestelevision.com, and you can binge watch all the fabulous shows at EverTalk TV at evertalktv.com. And thank you for watching. Tune in next time.